I always used to say I was born with an old soul and a soft heart, but life has a funny way of sanding the softness off a person. You hit 70, 75, and suddenly folks talk to you like you're a dusty lamp sitting in the corner, still shining. Maybe, but only if someone bothers to plug you in. It's wild how quick people forget the life you've lived, the storms you've held steady through, the nights you stayed awake praying over them when they were still small enough to curl against your ribs. My name is Lorraine Monroe, 78 years old. And let me tell you something, age may wrinkle the skin, but disrespect, baby, disrespect wrinkles the soul if you let it, and I wasn't about to let it. I didn't always speak like this. Lord knows when I was younger, I was polite to a fault. Yes ma'am, no, sir, thank you kindly, and all that jazz your mama drills into your bones before you can even tie your shoes. But somewhere between outliving my husband and watching the world turn a little colder around the edges, I learned how to talk plainly. Life humbles you, but it also frees you. At some point, you stop worrying about how your truth sounds and start caring about how it sits in your chest. And honey, mine had been sitting heavy. I lived in a little blue house with peeling shutters and a rose bush my late husband, Henry, planted the summer before he passed. He'd said, "Lorraine, this bush gonna outlive us both." And I told him not to tempt God like that, but he just laughed, kissed his fingers, and tapped the dirt like he was sealing a promise. Damned if he wasn't right. That rosebush kept blooming every year, stubborn and bright and smelling like the kind of joy you don't forget. Funny thing is, people will admire your flowers and still tear up your roots if they think there's a dollar under the soil. Now let's talk about my son, Reggie, my baby boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard and present them like gold. My son who used to say, "Mama, when I'm rich, I'ma buy you a mansion with fountains and everything." The same boy who grew up, put on fancy suits, got himself a high-paying job, and suddenly started looking at me like I was holding him back instead of holding him up. Life be lifing like that sometimes. Reggie married a woman named Candace Sharptongue. Sharp nails, sharp eyes that always seemed to skim my house like she was checking price tags. I'd be cooking a roast or stirring a pot of gumbo and she'd be there in the doorway with her designer bags and her mom Lorraine. "You really should update these cabinets." Update with what? My pension and my prayers. She never asked that part. But see, the shift didn't happen all at once. That's the thing about heartbreak, it comes quiet, like a thief slipping in through a cracked window. One day Reggie started suggesting little things. "Mama, maybe move your savings into this account, it's easier." "Mama, you sure you don't need help organizing your paperwork?" "Mama, you still paying your bills on time, right?" At first, I was grateful he cared. I thought, look at my boy, being responsible, maturity looks good on him. But then the tone changed. The warmth faded. The questions turned into checks. Checks turned into monitoring. And monitoring turned into judgment. He'd look at me and I could feel him assessing, taking inventory, calculating, even, like I was a house he planned on flipping when the owner finally, well, moved on. That's the phrase he liked. Moved on. As if the thought tasted civilized. You know what age does? It makes you invisible until someone wants something. Let me paint the moment everything shifted for me. It was a Sunday afternoon, the kind of afternoon where sunlight falls soft on the floorboards and you can hear kids down the street laughing like heaven leaked through the clouds. I had invited Reggie and Candace for dinner. I'd made pot roast melt in your mouth good, with potatoes that soaked up all the flavors. You know the kind. They arrived late, as usual, sliding through the door with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. They complimented nothing. Candace did that thing where she sniffed the air like she was checking for smoke alarms going off. And then, halfway through dinner prep, I saw them standing in my hallway whispering like teenagers plotting mischief. I stepped closer, quiet as my old knees allowed, and heard Candace murmur, "This place would look amazing with the walls knocked out. Open concept, natural light. We could get so much for it after renovations." Reggie hummed in agreement. "Yeah, once she's gone, we can really do something with it." Gone. Once she's gone. That hit me like a punch to the chest. I leaned against the doorframe to steady myself. It's a strange thing, hearing your child talk about your death like it's a house closing date. Like you're an inconvenience standing between him and a better floor plan. I didn't confront him then, not because I was scared, but because I felt something inside me shift. Like a tide pulling back before the storm hits. But the real breaking point, the one that pushed me past grief and into clarity, that came a few weeks later. They invited me to dinner at their home. Well, invited is generous. They told me I should come because family time is important. I put on my nice dress, brushed my thinning hair, put on the earrings Henry gave me our 20th anniversary. I didn't bother with makeup. At my age, energy is currency, and I wasn't about to spend it painting my face for ungrateful people. When I walked into their pristine beige palace, everything smelled like those overpriced candles that try too hard. Salted vanilla cloudburst or something ridiculous like that. The kind of scent that makes you nostalgic for fresh air. Dinner was chaotic, too many voices, too many complaints, too much pretending. But then Candace, with her flawless manicure and her fake sweet voice, leaned over and whispered, "Lorraine, we actually set up a place for you in the sunroom. It's quieter there. You'll be more comfortable." When someone tells you they're thinking about your comfort, but they won't look you in the eye, baby, they are not thinking about your comfort. I followed her, confused but trying to be gracious, until I saw the setup. A little folding table, a chair with a wobble, a single plate, facing the backyard like I was being put in timeout. They wanted me to eat alone, away from the family, like I was a burden, like my presence was some ugly lamp they didn't want guests to see. And I sat. Because I didn't want a scene, because I didn't want Reggie to feel embarrassed. Because old habits die slow, but humiliation tastes different when you're old. It sits heavy on the tongue, hard to swallow. And just when I thought it couldn't sting worse, their oldest daughter, my granddaughter, sweet little Mia, wandered in with her tablet and big innocent eyes. "Grandma, why are you eating out here?" I opened my mouth, but before I could answer, she added, "Daddy said you're getting too old to keep up, and that when you're gone, we can get a pool." A pool, my death, for a pool. I swear, I felt something inside me snap, not loudly, but cleanly, like a twig cracking in a quiet forest. My heart didn't break. No, heartbreak is too gentle a word. My heart pivoted, turned toward something colder, sharper, wiser. I didn't finish my meal. I don't even remember tasting it. I just remember sitting there thinking, "Oh Lorraine, they messed with the wrong grandmother." They truly did. After dinner, they didn't walk me out, didn't offer leftovers, didn't thank me for coming. They just carried on laughing inside while I quietly put on my coat in the hallway. I drove home slow. Real slow. The night felt heavy, but my mind felt suddenly clear, like someone had wiped the fog off the window of my spirit. I walked through my house that night, touching door frames, picture frames, old books Henry loved, and I realized this house had been my refuge, my sanctuary, my history. But to them, it was real estate, dollar signs, a future they thought they inherited by default. That's when the idea came to me. Not revenge. Oh no, revenge is petty and loud. What came to me was justice, quiet justice, soft power, the kind that doesn't need to shout to cut deep. I decided I would rewrite the ending of their story. Before they ever got to write mine, the next morning, I made a cup of tea, sat by Henry's rosebush, and dialed the number of the one person I trusted on this earth. My friend Denise, retired attorney, sharp as a tack. She answered with her usual, "What's wrong, baby? I can hear it in your breath." I told her everything. Every disrespectful whisper, every selfish plan, every humiliating detail. She didn't interrupt not once, and when I finished, she said something that felt like a final nudge from God himself. "Lorraine, you don't owe selfish people a damn thing. Not your peace, not your home, not your silence." That's when the plan became real. I spent the next few weeks doing quiet things, gentle things, hidden things. I went through my paperwork, cleaned out Henry's desk, updated accounts. I met with lawyers, researched buyers, sold off small antiques one by one. I even found a new place to live, small, cozy, a senior residence with a courtyard and a weekly bingo night that everybody gets way too competitive about. The whole time, Reggie thought I was declining, told people I was slowing down. Little did he know, I was moving faster than I had in years, just silently, like snow melting in the dark. I put my house on a private market listing, quiet as a whisper. It sold fast to a young couple who loved old things, respected stories, and promised to keep the rosebush blooming. Everything was signed before Reggie even had a clue. And the day the check cleared, baby, I felt lighter than I had in decades. Like God himself had lifted a weight off my shoulders and placed it in a vault. When I told Reggie, because I did tell him, "I'm not cruel," he looked at me like I'd stolen something from him. "Mom," he said, voice shaking, "how could you do that? That was supposed to be our house." "Funny," I replied, "I thought it was mine." He didn't know what to say. People rarely do when the person they underestimated finally speaks in a language they understand. Boundary. I moved into my new place the next week. Small room, big windows, soft sheets, friendly nurses who call me Miss Lorraine like I'm royalty, and for the first time in years, I slept without fear of being watched like expiration dates. The funny part, I miss my old house, but not in a way that aches. More like remembering a song you used to hum. I loved it enough to let it go. I loved myself enough to not let my children's greed define my ending. Sometimes, late at night, I sit on the courtyard bench and watch the wind move through the trees. I think about how people talk about elderhood like it's a slow fade out. Like your final years are just waiting rooms for the grave. But that's a lie. Your last chapters can be your sharpest, your sweetest, your most defiant. People think revenge is fireworks and screaming matches. But the real kind, oh baby, the real kind is quiet, soft, surgical. It's choosing yourself in a world that treated you like background furniture. Reggie still calls sometimes, mostly to ask why, to say he didn't mean it like that. But I'm done carrying other people's meanings. I tell him, son, I love you, but love don't pay the rent on respect, and I refuse to live in a house where I ain't welcome, especially if it's my own. Sometimes I wish he'd understand. Other times, I think understanding is above his pay grade. But me, I'm good, better than good. My story ain't ending anytime soon, and I'll be damned if I let anyone write me off while I'm still breathing, walking, laughing, sipping my evening tea, and gossiping with the other ladies about which staff member looks like he belongs in a movie. Growing old isn't a tragedy, being disrespected while you do it is. And I'm nobody's cautionary tale, not now, not ever. I used to wonder, in those first few quiet weeks at the residence, whether the universe was punishing me or protecting me. Some nights I'd lie in that little twin bed with the soft lavender sheets and listen to the radiator clicking like an old man's knees. And I'd think, Lorraine, girl, what have you done? And other nights, especially when the wind carried that sweet smell of pine from the courtyard, I'd whisper, thank you, to whoever was listening, because freedom, at my age, tastes different, stronger, sweeter, like something you earned with years of swallowing things you should have spit out. And trust me, baby, I swallowed a whole lot. The staff at the residence adored me. Mostly because I wasn't one of the cranky ones who yelled at folks for folding towels wrong. I actually liked the company. The nurses called me Miss L. The kitchen boys always brought me extra cornbread. And the other residents treated me like some kind of queen auntie who'd lived 10 lives and had a story for every wrinkle. I'd sit in the common room sipping lukewarm coffee that tasted like it had been brewed by someone's bored cousin. And the ladies would gather around me like pigeons around breadcrumbs. Miss Lorraine, they'd say, tell us the story about the time you almost slapped that doctor. Or, Miss Lorraine, what happened to your house again? And I'd really laugh for the first time in a long while. But nights, well, nights were a different creature. Nights made you face the ache, made you remember what it felt like to stand in front of a life you built and watch it get chipped away by hands you once held tenderly. I'd think about Henry, sometimes his voice, his jokes, the way he'd run his thumb across my knuckles when he thought I was worrying too hard. He would have been furious if he'd seen how our children behaved. Not loud furious. Quiet furious. The kind where a man sits at the table polishing his reading glasses, not saying a word, but letting the silence carry the weight of disappointment. But grief shifts shapes. It becomes softer, rounder, something you can hold without bleeding. One evening, as I sat near the window, folding my laundry, a slow ritual I'd come to enjoy, my phone buzzed. Not the new smartphone Denise bought for me, the old flip phone. The one I kept turned off in my nightstand drawer like a relic. I had turned it on earlier only because I wanted to listen to the old voicemail Henry left me the night he died. His voice still sounded like home. But now it buzzed, and when I opened it, Reggie's name lit up the tiny screen. I stared at it, let it buzz again, let it stop, let it buzz once more, like the phone itself was anxious. When I finally answered, his breath came through the line jagged and fast. Mama. I didn't say anything. I wanted him to feel the silence. I wanted him to taste it. Mama, why did you do that? Why would you sell the house without talking to me? Do you know what people are saying? Do you know how embarrassed I am? Embarrassed. Lord, give me strength. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the little quilts hanging in the hallway like flags of conquered battles. Reggie, I said, slow as honey, if embarrassment is the worst thing you feel, you're getting off easy. He didn't like that. I could hear his ego flaring up like cheap hairspray catching fire. Mom, you didn't think about how this affects us. Affects you, I repeated. Baby, you put me in a sunroom like I was a houseplant past its prime. Don't talk to me about effects. Silence, heavy, hot, That wasn't what we meant, he stammered. Candace did exactly what she meant, I said. And so did you. He exhaled sharply. We were planning a future, and I'm still living a present, I replied. Funny how nobody asked me about that part. He didn't have a comeback. Wasn't used to me talking like that, like someone who didn't owe him softness. Ma, he finally whispered, voice low, you blindsided us. No, baby, I corrected gently. I leveled the playing field. He didn't call again for a while after that, and I didn't chase him. See, there comes a point in a mother's life where she has to unclench her fist, stop holding on to the rope burning her palms, stop believing that love can fix rot, because sometimes the rot ain't in the fruit, it's in the soil, the whole environment poisoned, and you don't even realize it until something new grows somewhere else. My something new came in the form of a little girl named Avery. She wasn't a resident. She was the granddaughter of the nurse on night shift, 7 years old, big afro puff tied up with a purple ribbon, eyes that sparkled like she'd just swallowed a handful of starlight. She wandered into my room one evening while her grandmother was checking vitals. Hi, she said without knocking, bold as brass. Hi yourself, I replied. She bounced onto my bed like a cat claiming territory. Mama says, you tell the best stories, is that right? She nodded vigorously. Tell me one. And so I did. I told her the story of a little rosebush planted by a stubborn man with gentle hands. I told her how that rose survived storms and winters and careless gardeners, how it bloomed when everything else died, how the world underestimated its roots. When I finished, she said, sounds like you. I laughed. Not the polite kind, the kind that shakes the dust off your bones. Avery started visiting me often. Drawings. Snacks she smuggled in. Hugs that squeezed my ribs but in the best way. She reminded me of Reggie when he was small before the world sharpened him, before greed and pride carved out the soft parts. Children have a way of stitching you back together without even knowing they're holding a needle. But life always has another wave waiting. One afternoon, I was in the courtyard reading a book with pages so thin they felt like secrets, when Denise walked up with her lawyer face on, the concerned one, the one that meant something was coming. Elle, she said gently, sitting beside me, your son filed a petition. For what? For guardianship. I closed my book slow. Guardianship. The legal way of saying, you too old to think straight, so I'm a think for you. He wanted control. Over my accounts, my health decisions, everything he didn't get through the house. He says you're confused, Denise added, eyes softening, that you're vulnerable, that you're being manipulated. I snorted. Manipulated by who? My bingo cards. She didn't smile. That's how I knew it was serious. You'll need an evaluation, she said. A judge will require it. I sat there watching the wind ripple the leaves of the maple tree, watching the sunlight slip between branches like gold threads in a torn curtain. Let him try, I whispered. The evaluation was 3 weeks later. A psychologist came to the residence. Young woman. Kind eyes. Shoes to clean to trust, but a good spirit around her. She asked questions. Memory tests. Logic puzzles. I answered everything with a clarity that surprised even me. Trauma can sharpen the mind sometimes. Betrayal. To dot at the end, she closed her notebook and said, Miss Monroe, you're more cognitively intact than some people half your age. Don't be shy with compliments now. I winked. She smiled. And I knew right then that Reggie was about to learn a lesson the universe had been preparing for him. The court date arrived on a rainy Thursday morning, the kind where water slides down the windows like the sky is mourning something. I wore a navy dress and the pearls Henry gave me, because even when life gets messy, dignity should stay ironed and starched. The court date arrived on a rainy Thursday morning, the kind where water slides down the windows like the sky is mourning something. I wore a navy dress and the pearls Henry gave me, because even when life gets messy, dignity should stay ironed and starched. But when the judge entered, something shifted in the air. Maybe she recognized me from my years teaching at the local college. Maybe she just sensed the truth hanging in the room like humidity, hard to ignore. Denise did her thing. Sharp, precise, cool as ice water. When it was Reggie's turn to speak, he talked about concern, worry, fear, made himself sound like a saint doing charity work. But then the psychologist's report was read. Miss Monroe demonstrates exceptional cognitive integrity, the evaluator wrote. She is articulate, organized, mentally sharp, and fully capable of managing her own affairs. Then came the line that sealed everything. There is no evidence of confusion or impairment. However, there is evidence of familial pressure causing emotional distress. Familial pressure. Distress, in court language, that translates to, "Sir, have several seats." The judge looked over her glasses at my son, the way a mama looks at a child holding a broken vase behind his back. And then she turned to me. "Miss Monroe," she said warmly, "your independence stands." Just like that, Reggie's face crumpled. Candace looked like someone stole her parking spot in hell. I didn't smirk, didn't gloat, didn't feed the fire of their embarrassment. I just said, "Thank you, Your Honor," and folded my hands in my lap like a woman who knew exactly who she was. After the hearing, Reggie followed me into the hallway. "Mom," he said, voice cracking. I thought I was helping." "Helping who?" I asked softly. "Me, or yourself?" He swallowed hard. His eyes glistened. The boy he used to be flickered, for a second frightened, small. "Sorry, Mama. I didn't mean." "Yes, you did," I said. "And that's the saddest part." He reached out to touch my arm. I stepped back, not cruelly, but firmly. "Respect," I said, "is a bridge. Once you burn it, you gotta build it back plank by plank. And baby, you haven't even picked up a hammer." I walked away then. My steps were slow, but steady, steadier than they'd been in years. Back at the residence, the staff threw me a little celebration. Cookies, balloons, a handmade card from Avery with glitter that stayed in my carpet for days. They celebrated not because I won something, but because I refused to lose myself. Life settled into a gentle rhythm after that. Mornings with coffee, afternoon naps with sunbeams slipping across my blanket, bingo nights where folks got way too serious about their markers. Avery visiting me with stories from school and drawings she insisted were portraits of me, even though I had 6 fingers in one and purple hair in another. I found peace. Not loud peace. Not shouting from the rooftops, peace, but soft peace. The kind that sits with you like an old friend. But here's the truth, nobody tells you. Peace doesn't erase hurt. It just gives it someplace softer to rest. Some nights I'd lie awake thinking about the little blue house. The way sunlight slanted across the staircase at 5 p.m., the smell of cinnamon on holidays, Henry humming off-key while cooking breakfast, the life we built in every corner. But I didn't regret selling it, not once. I saved that house from dishonor, from being gutted by people who never learned how to value the things that held them together. Reggie called sometimes, not often, and never with the softness a mother dreams of. But that's all right. You can't force someone to grow where they refuse to water themselves. Avery grew attached to me over the months. One afternoon she sat on the edge of my bed, swinging her legs and asked, "Miss Lorraine, do you miss your old house?" I thought about it. Really thought. "Baby," I said, "I miss who I was in that house, but I'm proud of who I am outside of it." She nodded like she understood the whole universe. Then she laid her tiny hand on mine and whispered, "You're magic." And for the first time in years, I believed it. I believed that surviving disrespect, surviving heartbreak, surviving your own children's greed and still finding gentleness, that was a kind of magic. A kind the world doesn't celebrate enough, but I celebrated it. Quietly, daily, like a prayer said under your breath. And I wasn't done yet. My story still had one more turn waiting for me, one I didn't see coming. Asterisk, a few nights later. Something in me shifted quietly, like a door clicking shut in a long hallway. The nurses dimmed the lights, the building settled, and the world felt soft around the edges. My breath came slower, easier, like even my lungs were tired of arguing with time. Reggie came again, this time without excuses, without swagger, just a man carrying the weight of his own choices. He sat beside my bed, hands trembling like an apology. He didn't know how to speak. "Ma," he whispered, "I wish I could go back." I smiled, small and tired. "Baby, if life had a rewind button, half the world would be pressing it." He cried quietly, the way grown men do when they finally run out of armor. I squeezed his hand thin, fragile, but still mine and whispered, "Go be better than this moment. That's how you repay me." He nodded like a boy again. Later, when the hallway went silent and Avery curled up on the chair next to me, I felt a strange warmth fill the room. Not fear, not regret, just a soft settling. Like everything that ever hurt finally exhaled. I looked at that sweet girl and said, "Listen to me, baby. Love yourself loud enough that nobody ever gets to shrink you." She wiped her cheeks and whispered, "I will." My last thought wasn't about the house, or the money, or even the revenge. It was this: I lived long enough to choose myself, and that after, everything was enough. And when the night finally folded around me, it didn't feel like an ending at all, just a gentle turning of the page.